Thank you all for joining on today virtually. This is, of course, going to be a unique way to do a stewardship meeting. But hopefully you all got a swag bag, either picked one up yourself or had one delivered to your front porch. And inside of there, you should have found a variety of materials, including an agenda.
Cookies were awesome.
I'm kind of old-fashioned. I'll be sharing like this.
I don't remember seeing an agenda.
So that you should have one of those in your bag. It may have been folded up in the envelope with the pledge card.
It was, mine was, yeah.
Great. So you'll be able to follow along. You'll see we're going to, as expected, do a small review of the budget. We're going to talk about some new programming. There's going to be an opportunity for all of you to share, and there are some suggested topics there because we know this is replacing the coffee hour today. And we're also going to hear a message from Vicki Wiesen. So with that, I'll turn it over to Father Paul for an opening prayer.
The Lord be with you, and also with you. Let us pray. Loving God, you place us here on this earth and gift us with so much, and then task us with so much. We seek to rise to the challenge that you have given. Give us a heart to hear your call. Through Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. Next is your senior warden, Bonnie Shu, and she's going to provide a brief update of the status at St. Paul's.
Hi there. I'm so glad to see all of you. We have 29 cameras, or 29 people, not even 29 people, because I see lots of double people. So this is more attendance than we would get a lot of Sundays in church. So this is awesome. Just a quick update about what's been going on from a vestry perspective. We have been, we were chugging along as planned until March, and then everything hit us. And up until March, we were going along and everything was going as we should. And then we closed down. But I wanted to highlight all of the things that have happened since then, because we don't see each other in person. There's been a lot of awesome things that have gone on that we have noticed that I wanted to highlight. So I want to start with outreach. The masks. I mean, we came together, and I know Margie made masks. I know Carice made masks. I know Sandy made masks. I don't know I know Sherry made masks. I know a lot of people here made masks, and it was over 2,000. That stuns me. Over 2,000 masks that were put out to people in our community. Family Promise kept going. A lot of us donated financially to Family Promise. We're now getting started back up. I already noticed a couple of us have volunteered to cook dinner for 25. That is always an opportunity for you, Family Promise. I don't see Sharon here, but I know that they're looking for new people to take part in Family Promise, but we have kept going. Whenever they're asking us to do something, someone from St. Paul's is volunteering. Our LEMs have volunteered to be every week. Somebody has volunteered to be a Eucharistic minister with Father Paul, whether it's just over Zoom or whether you're in the sanctuary with him. And that has not stopped. Our service, Jen and Keith and Ben and everybody who has gone into the church and participated in that. And even though we can't all be together, people pitched in to make it that we are all here together, even though we're not physically together. And that's been great to me. The Altar Guild, somebody shows up to the church before people get there, and somebody shows up to the church after people are there, and they get the altar ready. It's just like we're there, but we're not. So we're not skipping a beat. We just can't be together. Choir. You have seen us do a few of those, and it's a little bit intimidating to sing in my living room or in my entryway and record myself singing and then hope that it sounds good with everybody. But Kathy and oh my gosh, and David and everybody who has put their part in that, it's just an amazing thing that we've all done, and and just it's working. I don't love it, I don't like to hear when I listen to my part, I don't love it, but when it comes all together, it sounds good. We now have a licensed preschool. Mora is licensed. We spent most of the last 2 years trying to get our building up to par for the licensing, and now she's licensed. So that's an awesome thing that has happened. We have, like, everybody who I can see you, and anybody who I can just see your name on the screen, we've all contributed toward that. We got the fire alarm up, all of the repairs that go into that on a weekly basis. Dan is at the church making sure, there are screens that need to be repaired. And just because we're not there, it doesn't mean that things are not happening there, because she's still holding classes. And I don't know if you saw the email, but she's looking for donations of candy for this coming Saturday. For her parade, she's going to have a socially distanced costume parade. So she's looking for that. Also, things that the yard work is still continuing. And I know that Dawn is doing some of that. And I know that Alec is sometimes going over and helping him. All of that stuff is still happening. And we don't see who's doing it. So it's hard for me to say thank you to all of you, but whoever is doing it, thank you so much. There are book groups. There's been a book club group that's gone through the whole time. And I'm looking forward to the racial justice book groups that are coming up, and to Keith's book group that is coming up.
Bonnie, you got muted.
I don't know how that happened, but we do have a couple of needs that the vestry's been talking about, and they are financial needs, but they're not anything that's humongous. But our parking lot needs some attention, and also our roof needs repair. We don't need a new roof, but our roof needs repair. So when you, thank heavens, but when you hear those things coming up, those are things that we are considering for the next year. So when you're considering your pledge, we hope that you take those things into account. And like I said, I'm amazed by everybody that is still here, because I know you have a choice on Sunday morning, like flight attendants say, I know you have a choice when flying. I know you have a choice on Zoom also on Sunday morning. And I'm just so glad that you guys are here. Thanks.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next, we're going to hear from Father Paul about a new program opportunity, and this really arose out of the Stewardship Committee meetings. And so just as a reminder, the Stewardship is comprised of Marilyn Allen and Lauren Wright and Julie Hagan and myself. And as we started to gear up for this stewardship season, we had the luxury of meeting in person. And we did it socially distanced, sometimes on my front patio, sometimes at Julie's house. And we wore masks and did everything we were supposed to and followed rules, and no one got sick. But it was such a luxury and such a pleasure and such a blessing to actually see people face to face. And out of that grew the desire to try and do more of that through the church. And the idea came up that maybe we would try to start a small group program. And of course, we don't know what that looks like yet in terms of face-to-face meetings, but it's something we're at least interested in gauging interest in. And Father Paul is going to provide an introduction to that.
Thank you, Andy. Small group ministry is something that I did in my previous parish, and we launched some of it in the previous proportionate to that. And it's something that large churches have done and small churches as well. It was first pioneered by the largest Episcopal church in the United States, St. Martin's in Houston, back in the 80s, and it resulted in the rector of the church being elected bishop. But it really, really grew the church in many ways. It grew it in depth and it grew it in breadth. Now, you've heard me say over and over again that telling our story is so important. That when we tell our stories, we find out who we are and we find out who you are so that we can be in community together. And when we tell our community stories, the same thing happens on a larger scale. So there is a program that came out of the Diocese of Texas that I've used in a number of different places. I started it last year with a group of young adults, including Trista Pendergrast and two couples from Christchurch Anacortes. It's very simple. The material consists of a stack of cards, of 31 cards. And on each card, on one side is an idea and a Bible verse. And on the other side is a question about that. It helps you tell your story in relation to that idea. And so when the small group meets, what we do is we often begin with a meal. Again, how this is going to play out in COVID days, we'll have to kind of see how that works. But outside of COVID, we begin with a meal or maybe some light refreshments. And then each person, a card is drawn, and that card then gives the theme for the night. And people respond to the question around the circle. And while, the person who's talking has the floor, nobody else can talk, and nobody else, they're telling their story. So there's something sacred about telling your story. And so you listen carefully and you listen with ears and heart. And until everyone has told their story around. And then you do it again. You go around again. And this time you get to say, what you said sparked something new for me. And you continue to embellish your own story. You're not correcting or changing anybody else's story. You're using that story to help you tell your own story. When I did this in Silver City, we ended up with 4 groups going. One of them kind of fell apart after a while, and then we started a 5th one with some people outside the church, and it was very, very successful. It was a chance to build an intimate group that's safe, where you can tell your story, where you can explore your own spirituality. And sometimes you hear a story and it kind of challenges you, like, I never thought about it that way, and you begin to think, and it sparks new growth in you. And so this is very powerful and very simple. These sets of cards are free. And I have a set or two. And according to the number we need, we'll put this together. We are playing with the idea whether this needs to be maybe geographical. People in this area can sign up for this one so people don't have to drive so far. Or it could be just kind of auto select. Couples can be in it together. That makes it just simple. And the small group size is 6. 8 is a large group. If you grow to 8, then we start thinking about splitting and making 2 groups. And so the first meeting, I usually like to meet with the group. We set some ground rules. We said we do some housekeeping as to how often we're going to meet, whether it's once a month, once a week, every other week, whatever. Whether we're going to meet in one place all the time or in someone's house, rotating around. However, we take care of all of those kinds of things. And then I like to meet with the team group a time or two to kind of get them rolling. And then I back out, and y'all are on your own. I do not know if the young adults group is still meeting. I think because of COVID, that's probably not the case. And I haven't talked with Trista about it. But I would love to launch this. And so in the coming days, weeks, months, there will be some sign-up sheets. And you are invited to put your name on the line. And then when we have these groups formed, we'll be back in contact with you, and we'll invite you to start. So I'm excited about that. As we tell our story, we find out who we are. And in terms of this year's stewardship theme, in a sense, we find our own hearts. And when I hear someone else's story, I find their heart. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Father Paul. Next, if you're looking at your agenda, you will see that Keith Axberg generously volunteered to discuss the budget, which may be one of the most difficult things to do. So we were so thankful that he was willing to do that, but then he became ill. And so we're glad to see you today, Keith, and that you feel well enough to be with us, but we do not have a budget presentation from Keith. But everyone did receive a letter from our treasurer, Maggie Bird, and vestry member, and also the detailed budget was on the back. And Maggie, I believe, is here and has maybe a little bit to add from diocesan convention.
Okay. Well, it was a privilege to dust off convention cobwebs and join them again online. It was a little different, but nonetheless equally enjoyable, inspiring, and informative. And the best news is they passed a budget that will continue to underwrite our Father Paul's compensation package, which is always good news. Yay! And also the COLA, the cost of living allowance that has been used over the years with the diocese was scheduled to be 1.3% and is actually was voted on 0.9%. And I'm sorry the clergy and staff are not getting more, but that's what we're going to go with. So the preliminary budget that I sent out to the Stewardship Committee anticipated the 1.3, but it's going to be 0.9% on that. As I said in my letter to the Stewardship Committee, expenses are holding their own simply because we are not having the activity in the building that warrants higher utility costs, blah, blah, blah. You know how that goes. One of the increases in budget that has cropped up is compensation for our beloved Natalie. Natalie is the sole line of defense against COVID, I swear. She has taken caring for our building, our physical plant, as if it was her own baby. And I tell you, it's amazing what that woman has done to keep that space sacred and clean. So to her and Diana, our janitor, I say, gracias, gracias, because it's incredible how tidy that building is. And how safe I feel. I don't go in very often because, you know, I'm in the geezer club crowd and we don't get out too much. But when I do go in there, I'm always amazed at how safe I feel. So that's always good. So that's a big nut, but it's a good nut. So, and we have included in the preliminary budget an increase in the building and maintenance fund, simply because, as Dan Niven can tell you, we got roof problems and we would like to look forward to repairing our parking lots. So those are some things that we're considering going forward after we determine where we're going to be budget-wise. The diocesan assessment remains at 14.5%. We received part of the PPP grant money out of the SBA program that came out of the CARES Act from Congress earlier in the spring. We got $27,500. Wow, that was nice. Many in the diocese also received money too, and it has helped us carry on. However, that $27,500 was subject to diocesan assessment. So we had to pay 14.5% to the diocese on that, which, ouch, but nonetheless, love the diocese for what they do for St. Paul's and Resurrection. So I'm not going to crab about that too much, if at all. Utilities are down simply because we're not in the building. Good news, now that Maura has a licensed Skagit art preschool, she continues to share expenses by underwriting her based on her tuition. And she's been faithful throughout the whole year, COVID included. We have not missed a beat with Maura. And I'm so grateful for that, as we all should be. I'm looking at the budget here, so I see the need for maybe about, short of a 7% increase in pledges that would be needed to match this preliminary budget, but maybe not so much. And I invite any other questions that you may have about where we've been and where we want to go. I just want to give you a little insight on convention. While it was on Zoom and live streaming, profound conversation around racial and social injustice. And I am jazzed, I am stoked. I have put my toe, Father Paul, in the Salish Sea, and I'm waiting to find out about the ocean. So I am stoked because the convention approved a 2% across the budget, and we're talking about a $3 million diocesan budget, to start a fund to compensate those BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are seeking ordination into the ministry to help their communities. We're going to start a fund, 2%. And so that these people sign up to be lifted up as clergy, knowing they're not ever going to have a stipend, pension, or health care coverage. By deciding to do this 2% across the board into a sinking fund, we will be able to help lift these ministries up to meet the needs of our BIPOC program. I'm just so excited. Oh, it's just good news. And I have to thank Joe Beecher and all the people that worked on the ethnic, I'm gonna blow this, Father Paul, the ethnic colors of, I'm sorry. It's just cool. Nonetheless, you can read about it.
Circles of color.
Circles of color, that's it. Oh, they got a fabulous logo and they've got pins, and it's just so exciting. And the people that we witnessed yesterday who told their stories of being a BIPOC member of community were so inspiring and so profoundly disturbing. It was hard to hear some of them, but my goodness, I walked away from that session that our good friend Terry Kylo facilitated, knowing that we are on the right path. All of us who have been protesting since the 60s know that this is something different this time. This means it's going to change. It's going to be slow, and we're just dipping our toe into the waters. But man, I'm jazzed. I'm just stoked. I'm sorry to go on, but that's just how I feel today. I'm just full of the Holy Spirit. Thank you, convention. Thank you, Bishop Rickle. And thank you for the people of color.
Thank you, Maggie. I think you probably all join me in thanking her. It's so nice to have a treasurer who doesn't just drone on about line items, but is obviously involved in and committed to our calling and is able to communicate it so well to us. But before we move on, does anyone have any questions about the budget? Susan, do you have a question?
Gotta
You're-
mute yours.
You're muted. Nope. Okay.
Hold your space bar. You can
Oh.
hold your space bar to unmute yourself.
Oh, she doesn't know
There she goes.
You have to hold it while you talk, though.
There you go.
Okay, so I would like to know more about this circle of color. That sounds fascinating. Is there somewhere that we could go to get information on that, Maggie?
I would defer to Father Paul on this because he's very involved in this effort. So I wasn't aware of it. I mean, I as we were preparing for convention, we were given some resolutions that were presented at convention. And so I just briefly found out about them through that work. And Father Paul can probably speak far greater than I ever can.
And I've never heard of it either, but I think it's a fascinating subject I would like to delve into. thank you for mentioning it. And thank you for your excellent work as our treasurer, Maggie.
Oh, thank you, Susan. That's so kind of you.
Thank you, Maggie, and thank you, Susan. Indeed, it is exciting. There are two relatively parallel programs, one coming out of the bishop's office, one grassroots among clergy and lay in the diocese, and they really are parallel. One has a slightly different focus on training, and the other on advocacy. But they're both structured the same, and they divide the diocese up in three, in relatively speaking, in three groups of people. People who are people of color, the BIPOC people. People who they call allies, who are people who have significant intercultural experience and skills, and then other people who don't necessarily, white people don't necessarily have that high level of skills. And the idea is to, and these 6 resolutions came out of the circle of color, the BIPOC group. And so it's the BIPOC group speaking to the convention with the help of the allies. And I'm in the allies group in both tracks. And the allies, then we're supposed to be the bridge people, the ones who are the cultural and linguistic interpreters between the two. And that's, I'm really excited about being there because I've been doing that since I was a kid. And it's really kind of right down my line. And then the idea is that all of us as a diocese will be able to develop a greater average level of intercultural competency. I see that Jen has put up the part, it is on the diocesan website. Thank you, Jen, there it is. If you go to the chat, there's a link there and you can go right through and right to that on the diocesan website and explore it more. I had really interested, Maggie made a comment about putting your toes in the water. I had made a comment on the floor of convention talking about ethnic interpreters or cultural interpreters for the Commission on Ministry when BIPOC candidates come through, so that the interaction can be expanded beyond just a white framework. And I caution people saying, let us not think that this is sticking our toe in Puget Sound and thinking we met the ocean. And that kind of caught on and got reverberated out a bit. But it is a big work. It's a huge work. And with Maggie, I'm really stoked. I found out the rest of yesterday and yesterday evening that what they really need is professional level cross-cultural trainer. Well, guess what?
Who's that?
So my activity on the level of diocese is probably going to increase, especially in this area, which is so dear to my own heart.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what St. Paul's gets to offer to the diocese?
Yeah.
Once all of this is in form of a website or something like that, I will put it up on the church website. We have a sticky post that's at the top of the church website that has all the information you need on everything from fighting sermons and stuff. And once I have reports from convention and stuff like that, I'll make sure that gets linked.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Okay, thank you. That was a bit of a, but that's okay.
That's okay. Are there any other questions about the budget before we move on?
Just a comment about convention for those of us that tuned in, and thanks Natalie for that link to the where we minted the new vocational deacons at the very end, the
Yes.
Greg service. It was really nice to see Baudolina as one of the lectors, and then also see Dennis as one of the deacons sending us off. So nice to see Skagit County and St. Paul's Mount Vernon represented at that liturgy.
And I was absolutely shocked to see the cathedral empty. There wasn't pews. There was just, occasional chairs here and there for the people attending. However, the music was incredible. David, you would have just been, and Dan, you too, I'm sure you were just solely impressed with the acoustics of our cathedral.
Great. Any more questions about the budget? I'm counting to 5. Okay. So next on our agenda is like coffee hour. It's a time for us to share a little bit. And this also grew out of those stewardship planning meetings that the committee had when we were having so much fun. And so we have some topics there, or maybe you have something you want to talk about on your own. And, I think you guys can tell for me, I really miss seeing everyone in person. I'm a talker, I'm a communicator, and I have a hard time watching a church service on the computer. It is hard for me to engage that way. I like to be there with people. So that's my sharing for today. What do I miss? I miss seeing all of you in person. And you probably picked that up too, because I was there for all of the bag handouts. I was going to be there standing there waiting for the cars to come up so that I could talk to you and see you. And that was a lot of fun. But go ahead and jump in and let us know from these sharing topics or something else that you want to share with the group. Now's the time.
Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Do you want me to do breakout rooms, or would you like, or should we stay in plenary?
Let's just see if people can just take turns and see if that'll work, I think. So jump in if someone's ready.
I'm like Andy. I really miss being able to see people in person, and I very quickly tire of all the Zoom. I mean, you can't focus in on the people. You're busy looking at the background. You can't read emotions, and you can't really see the full expression of what they're feeling in a little tiny blip on the screen. So I'm looking forward to a time when we can gather, even if it's with social distancing, but in real life person.
I think it's similar for me. I really enjoy the Zoom because it's my lifeline to all of you. And even though it's rather inadequate, at least it's something. And so the coffee hours and the time with the service have been really important to us, because otherwise we don't see you at all.
Yeah.
And it still has the feeling of, because we get to sing, because we get to participate, you're not just reading everything to us in the service, we participate in the prayers and such. So at least I get to feel like I'm still being able to worship as a group. And I really appreciate that. This is hard enough being sort of isolated, and I think it's going to get a lot worse because winter's coming and it's going to be harder to do stuff much outside. So, yuck.
Maggie, I just want to say thank you very much for what you shared from the convention, because as is the case with a lot of other things in 2020, there's just so much that feels really surreal. And I had to remind myself that, oh yeah, it's October. We have a convention in October. And I almost completely forgot about that. So thank you for bringing some of what you experienced to us. And Father Paul, congratulations.
I wonder if Elizabeth would like to share something. She was brand new at convention.
I was. Well, I was wanting to, but I thought Maggie did it so well that I just let her do it. But anyway, I too got really jazzed when everybody got together in the group, and some of the stories that some of the people told made me cry, and that was just such a good feeling to me, to have these people really share and help us to understand what's going on in their life. I really enjoyed learning about the ballot, or the nominees that we voted on and how that all worked. And the agenda, what was it? The Circle of Life. Circle of Life, is that what it is?
Circle of color.
Circle of Color, there we go. But that was really an eye-opener too for me. So I just really, really enjoyed it. Even though I was on a screen like we are now, it just seemed surreal. It just seemed really opening and great. It was just wonderful.
Voting was so streamlined. It was so
It
impressive.
was,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. You pushed a button and the next thing you know, we have the results. Unlike when you're in person convention where it takes so long for everything to get tabulated. So everything went, pretty speedily that way. There was one little incident where we had to have a grammatical discussion, but
yes. I remember that Father Paul told me I'd get to know how the family really felt when we talked that one time, and I thought maybe this is what he's talking about.
I think he was. That's what he was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It was good. It was very good.
But the resolutions all passed.
Mhm.
Even the sinking fund one I talked about earlier, where the resolution committee recommended do not pass. And I tell you, when I attended the Mount Baker pre-convention Zoom meeting, I was a little alarmed about that. And so we thought there was going to be some contention, but actually
I also
not, and it went smoothly.
Mhm.
It was rewarding.
Did. Yes.
What was the one that you were worried about? What
The
was it
2%,
about?
the 2% sinking fund to lift up the BIPOC clergy with compensation. That was the resolution committee felt that was setting a precedent that maybe they didn't want to go down. But like all conventions, you can quickly shut off that funding with the next body voting. So that people were, what if the fund gets too big and we don't have enough BIPOC? I'm sure that was what was going through their head, but nonetheless, the funding will be there, and that's cool.
I appreciated also the fellow that kept ringing in and calling for the vote.
Keeping it
I
along.
don't forget what his name is, but yeah.
Well, the bishop seemed to know what his function was, so
That was great.
that was great.
I'm looking at the question, what do you miss? And I'm missing the people that for whatever reason aren't able to participate or just aren't participating. I'm thinking of both younger and older people. We're missing a lot of people.
This is Darcy talking. I have two things to say. One, being an 8 o'clocker, I can't tell you how much it gives me such pleasure to see my church family, because going to 8 o'clock, I often don't. So that's a real positive. The negative for me is I truly miss not being in the physical building and in the sanctuary, because it is, to me, it's sacred. So nice to see you. Stay safe.
And I would like to agree basically with what Sandy said previously, the fact that I really do miss being in the church and being with everyone. And David is saying yes too. And I am so thrilled that I am easily able to have Zoom. In making my weekly vestry calls, I know I was speaking with Sybil Benham, who is unable to have good internet service where she lives. And so that was her complaint, that she cannot really do Zoom. And so that alludes to what you just said. And I think, if there's a way, and she said that she thoroughly enjoyed talking to Andy when she went by to get her swag bag. That was her contact of a physical face in the church. And I think there are a lot of people, due to my being in the top vulnerability level for COVID, I will probably be the last person to come back to a physical service in the church.
Yeah.
out of caution. And that's where Sandy McDougal and I are in total agreement, because we figured, you know, why flirt with death?
Yeah.
So, and yet, as one of the oldest members in our congregation by years of going to that physical church, it was 1966 when I started going to St. Paul's. And I have been a very, very faithful participant every year since then. So the church is a part of my heart. And I am so thrilled to be able to be involved at this level and to be associated with the people that have also been members for so many years. It truly is a church family. And if there's anything I can do to just, you know, to communicate with the public, I usually do, to encourage people to at least visit our church.
Yeah.
For me, I do what I do because this is Jen. For some odd reason, I think I might need to pin my video because I'm not showing up. The reason I do what I do on Sunday morning and I do all of the computer stuff is because this is part of my tithe, the whole time, talent, treasure. I have no treasure to contribute, so time and talent, but also you guys have been in my family. I'm the second generation on both sides of my family, strangely enough. For those longtime members, my dad's cousin is Barbara Kay. And yes, I'm seeing a lot of, oh God, no. Yeah, but you guys loved my grandparents for years and years. And when they were in hospice and when they were on their last legs, you guys circled us and supported us. And you guys have been my community since I moved here 4 years ago. And so this is why I do what I do, because you guys are that important to me.
Jen, we sure do appreciate everything that you've been doing for this church.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I can't thank you enough.
it's wonderful.
I'd like to respond to 2 questions. First of all, what do I miss? I miss singing with the choir because it's really not the same, as Bonnie said, singing all by yourself. But what brings me joy is that every single member of the choir, including our newest member, Anthony, have come together and recorded themselves or allowed themselves to be recorded, and have worked together to do the virtual anthems. And I just am so grateful that everybody is working to continue to provide music even when we can't practice and sing together.
And we love your music, Kathy. And the leadership of David has been tremendous also.
Indeed.
On that, I'll jump right in and say what brings me joy is having Kathy and Jen kind of in my back pocket, who are amazing with technology, skills for which I do not possess at all. And I love singing, and although it's been, in fact, if I couldn't sing, I think I would die. I'll go that far. And the past couple of weeks have been a little unusual, and I've enjoyed singing at the computer, but I really, really miss hearing the voices of congregants in the church. As a choir director for a lot of years, sometimes my head gets so full of sound, it's almost like a little bit of relief if things are quieter. And I'm finding that, my Father Paul. I'm finding that I really, really miss that sound coming from your bodies, from you as people of God, singing together. There's something about a choir and a congregation singing together that truly does equal something greater than the sum of our individual parts. But it gives me such great joy to be working, especially with the people in the choir. A lot of stuff that you don't get to see up front. There's all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes, and that people in the choir have such sense of community and such generous hearts to give of their time to fill in the blanks that I cannot. It's a great blessing to be able to lead and to delegate. And I've kind of been an overachiever and a perfectionist in past lives, and this is a tremendous blessing. Kathy probably thinks I'm to the point of being a sycophant. I say it so frequently, but I truly, truly feel that way. And thanks to all of you for appreciating what we're doing, even in really unusual circumstances. It's a joy.
One of the things that I worry about is what you brought up, Susan, is that we have a number of people that really don't have a connection to be able to join us. I think of Irene Neighbors, she doesn't have a computer. I think of Ralph Johnson, who can't figure out how to get on. There's several more, but it's tougher for them. And so if you ever feel like you'd like to call some people, just stay in touch with them, especially those that can't join us here. It would be a blessing indeed. So keep that in mind if you would.
Thanks, Sandy. I notice we're starting to lose some people, so I want to be sure and be cognizant of everyone's time, and I want everyone to be able to hear from Vicki.
Yes.
So Vicki has a message to deliver to us. Where is your heart? And that's next on our agenda.
Mute myself. There. Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Hear me? Okay. All right. So when I looked at that letter you sent, I saw a comma in here. Where is your heart? Question mark, Vicki Wiesen. Stewardship for me has been a lifelong journey that is still full of discoveries. As a child at St. Paul's, the offering plate was passed to the adults. So I learned that giving to the church was for adults only. And the only time the church talked to kids about money had to do with Lent and our little mite boxes. When we gave up chocolate or candy for Lent and then ate chocolate or candy, we were supposed to put coins in our little blue box and bring our full boxes up to the front on Easter and leave them at the flowered cross. The money from our Lenten sins would be sent to children somewhere who were hungry. So I learned that giving money to the church was to pay for our selfish indulgences, and it was expected that our boxes would be full by Easter. I learned more about money and the church when I went to college in Pullman. The church there had a handsome, very handsome, young assistant priest who stayed home from going skiing with his wife, so our college group could meet at their home and eat hot dogs on Sunday night. He reminded us quite often of how upset the church was that college students only took from the church and didn't give back. So out of guilt, I put more and more of my allowance from my grandmother, the one who did not approve of the Episcopal Church, into the plate on Sunday mornings. I began to wonder by what magic, I lost my place. By what magic they knew how much we did or did not give to the church. And I also learned that I could never be good enough for the church to be happy. Several years later, I took our 4-year-old to church in Raleigh, North Carolina, and thankfully my family followed. The first year we heard a stewardship talk. It was about talking to God and to each other, deciding on an amount to give, and then writing our first check each month to the church. Finally, some instruction. As the annual stewardship talks rolled by, I learned that stewardship was something talked about once a year and only had to do with meeting the church's budget. And that the 10%, a tithe, was the minimum standard for giving. Yet all along, I was learning something more from my church community, from my Girl Scouts, my neighbors. The best giving is not what someone else tells us to do. The best giving is that which comes from our hearts in response to others' needs. It is a way of being that calls out our gifts to meet the needs of others. Slowly, I was learning that that is indeed stewardship, an economy based on sharing gifts and needs to build and sustain community, grounded in the promise that what we have is always enough. God is good. Stewardship includes so much more than meeting a church's budget. So here's my way of understanding. My family has had land on Big Lake for most of my life. We went to that land on weekends and had fun taking care of it, cutting blackberries, making paths, planting fruit trees. I remember thinking that the land was a gift that we took care of because we loved it. The land didn't own us, or we the land. Looking back, I think that that is where my understanding of stewardship began. The last 20 years, I've had the privilege of living on that land and caring for it and for the lake, which receives the water that flows over and through my land. I've had the privilege of being part of this community of St. Paul's for more than half. It's a place where both gifts and needs are used and met. Like the land at the lake, it has a large place in my heart. And I am glad for the privilege of being a steward here. What I have received here, I want others to receive. And for that very reason, caring for and supporting St. Paul's comes directly out of my heart. For me, stewardship becomes the way of life, the way of being in the world. It is how I try to practice seeing myself in relationship to all of life. It takes practice to see myself as a steward and not as an owner, as a partner and not a competitor, as an acceptor and not a judge. There's joy and peace in this way of life. There is also challenge and calling, reflection and repentance. Being a steward is a vocation, a calling. A vocation that comes directly from our promises made in baptism. A vocation that we live into slowly and patiently with God's help. Along that way, we hear the words of the one talking on the road to Emmaus. And we turn and ask one another, did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road? What is your story of where is your heart? Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Vicki.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to the closing, the last portion. And so when you picked up your swag bags, you should have had an envelope inside. And since we can't be in person for an in-gathering Sunday like we traditionally do, we provided everyone with a stamped addressed envelope so that you can get your pledge card returned. And we're asking that they be returned by November 8th so that the vestry can have an accurate picture of where we're headed for next year as they prepare the new budget. And the pledge card's inside and looks like that. And it is fairly similar to what we've had in past years, so you should recognize it. It is two-sided. But I did want to make sure everyone noticed on the back, there is a place to indicate whether or not you would be interested in participating in a small group, the programming Father Paul spoke about. So he said there would be sign-up sheets coming. Well, you've already got the first one. And it's just a place where you can indicate interest, and then more organization will follow that. And so with that, I thank everyone for participating today. We tried to make it as efficient as possible since it's on Zoom and not in person. And if people want to continue and chat, they didn't talk about a topic or something that they wanted to, because I know we moved on, I'm happy to do that. But other than that, that concludes it for today. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy and Stewardship Committee.
Maggie, I'm sorry.
Well done.
Yes, thank you. And that, I'm sorry, that was my intention too.
Yes.
I have so much respect and appreciation for my co-committee members, Marilyn Allen, Lauren Wright, and Julie Hagan. And although we do have a lot of fun together, each one of us brings our own talents. I'm not going to point out names or anything, but there are those who keep us on task. And there are those who are very good cooks, and there are those who are very good at decorating and being creative. And somehow we always have just the right pieces to bring it all together. And so I have a huge amount of thanks for my committee members. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Terrific, Vicki.
Yes, Vicki, thank you. I have to tell you how serene